to Thursday, ABC TV and ABC iView. Tomorrow on Compass, meet the Rewilders.
We can discover a new sense of peace with the wild.
Gina Chick takes us inside Australia's growing rewilding movement.
We live in a culture that prioritises productivity over connection.
That spirit of rewilding, I feel, is living in my everyday life.
Surviving and thriving.
The country will speak to you.
Rewilding is a journey of connection.
Compass returns tomorrow 6:30 on ABC TV and ABC iView.
In regional news, sheds lost but homes saved in Victoria's west as questions emerge about the state's preparedness for major bushfires. The go slow on a promised $43 billion in projects frustrating workers in the New South Wales Illawarra. The Northern Territory Police to investigate claims of widespread racism within the force. And the Canberra scientist who's danced his way to global recognition of his kangaroo research. Hello, I'm Eleni Roussos. This is Regional News. Firefighters are being praised for their quick actions in saving more than 100 homes from a fast-moving bushfire in Victoria's west. While the state escaped this week's catastrophic fire conditions relatively unscathed, a grass fire that sprung up at Dural forced many locals to urgently leave their homes. But with dozens of fire trucks and aircraft on standby in nearby Ballarat, help was soon on hand, and the fire was brought under control without a single house being lost.
From the air, the ferocity and speed of the fire at Dural was immediately apparent to firefighters. On the ground, it was just as obvious.
It was moving so fast, the fire went from spot fires in the ground to crowning in the treetops within minutes.
As teams fought it from above and below, residents of the small town fled.
We just thought there was no defending where we are, and we had to go.
When Damien Maloney returned after midnight, he couldn't believe his eyes.
The fire has literally skipped our houses. It is something else.
This scrubby bushland around Dural has a terrible reputation among firefighters, so there was a lot of concern when this blaze took off. 60 tankers and a dozen aircraft were quickly deployed, and crews were able to bring it under control within hours.
You know, if you could hug every single one of them without making anyone uncomfortable, you probably would.
Authorities say the actions of firefighters, including trucks from the New South Wales Fire Service, saved 117 homes from being burnt.
So what caused the tears? One of the ladies came up and said, "You saved my mum's house?" Yeah. That'll do.
Today, crews were out mopping up and marking dangerous trees. The cause of the fire is still being investigated, but there's speculation it could have been a faulty electric fence. The weather that whipped up the blaze here also kept crews busy at the existing Bayandine Fireground near Beaufort. Half a dozen small fires flared up as the winds peaked, but all were quickly extinguished with the help of aerial bombers.
They do a good job. They do the work of probably half a dozen trucks in one hit. That's good, helps us get right on top of it from the word go.
Allowing a sense of calm to return to the streets of Beaufort for the first time in days. Natalie Whiting, ABC News, Dural.
Northern Territory Police are promising an independent investigation into explosive claims by former Constable Zachary Rolfe of widespread racism within the force. Will be called on to conduct the review.
A far calmer scene outside Alice Springs Court as the dust begins to settle on Zachary Rolfe's explosive testimony.
Any discrimination or racism absolutely not acceptable in the workplace, in the community. The statements made in the court do hurt the community. We have great relationships with the community and really strong ties.
The Territory's top cop is promising the former constable's claims will be investigated.
There's the Independent Commissioner for Corruption that may be involved. There's a couple of other agencies that may be involved.
Among Mr Rolfe's allegations, claims racist terminology was used everywhere in the force, including amongst high-ranking officers.
They have no place in this organisation or any department, but ultimately it was made in the coronial court. We need to let it run its course.
That's his evidence. That's the events he's giving to the court in the process. When I go to Alice Springs and the other stations around the Territory, I do not see those behaviours, I do not hear those comments.
Police are promising a thorough investigation into the claims made at the coronial inquest. But what elders in Central Australia say is needed is accountability and transparency.
When I want races in the police, we want those things to be investigated.
Bring everybody accountable to sit down and talk the truth about what's going on. And that's the only way we're going to get to the bottom of this, because it's only going to get worse.
Thomas Morgan, ABC News.
Also in Central Australia, a tourism peak body is calling on the NT government to relax bottle shop trading restrictions in Alice Springs. In a letter sent to Chief Minister Eva Lawler and obtained by the ABC, Tourism Central Australia said the restrictions were hurting the industry, with some businesses reporting declines of more than 50%. In January last year, the NT government forced the closure of Alice Springs bottle shops on Mondays and Tuesdays and limited trading hours to a 4-hour window on other days in response to a wave of alcohol-fuelled violence and crime. Sent on behalf of its members, the letter warns more visitors will bypass Alice Springs if they can't access the products or experiences they want.
No one's coming here just to hit the grog in Alice Springs. That's not what a visitor's travelling to do. But it's the ability to be able to service the market if they so choose to, set up the caravan and grab a six-pack of beer.
As energy production in New South Wales increasingly turns towards renewables, in one coastal region, progress has stalled. The Illawarra Renewable Energy Zone was declared a year ago, creating a potential $43 billion of investment. But so far, not a single project has materialised, raising questions about opportunities for workers leaving the coal industry.
A year ago, the possibilities here seemed endless and exciting. But a year after the Illawarra was declared a renewable energy zone, interest has cooled.
The Illawarra RES has not been getting the resource commitment from the New South Wales State Government that the other more advanced RESs has.
Around the state, dozens of RES projects are in various stages of development. The Central West has almost 40. New England, the South West and the Hunter have several in the works. But not a single project is in the pipeline for the Illawarra RES. Earlier this month, it was announced the Russellvale Colliery north of Wollongong would close, and questions resurfaced about the region's future beyond coal. Daryl Best has spent 43 years as a coal miner in the Illawarra.
There aren't alternatives. When I was working in a coal mine and you looked around and you heard that there was a renewable energy zone had just been established, and you think, well, what does that mean? Where do we go and work where? What is it?
Renewable energy zones were set up to power the state towards net zero by 2050.
What has been the big congestion point in the system before that is making sure the network capacity, the grid capacity, is up to taking the energy from where it's being generated to where it's being used.
Many of the industries expected to emerge here are long-term, such as offshore wind, green hydrogen and green steel. But without tangible renewable opportunities, workers may be forced to look elsewhere.
We have to develop new industry for these people to go into, and those industries are going to be renewables because that's the future.
A future that appears uncertain in this renewable energy zone. Tim Fernandez, ABC News, Wollongong.
It's been dubbed a wicked problem and has the power to shape elections. Youth crime is dominating attention in Queensland. As victims demand tougher penalties, some scared residents are hiring their own security to patrol the streets. But as lawmakers scramble for new solutions, youth advocates fear punitive measures will fail to address the underlying causes of crime.
In the small North Queensland town of Ayr, private security guards patrol the streets.
Go left? Yeah, turn left, mate, go.
There's growing unrest here about youth crime.
One night here they did 8 ram raids. That's 8 businesses that have to suffer. It's a ripple effect.
Some spooked residents are chipping in money.
We walk through here about 5 times a night.
To have guards monitor their neighbourhood.
Having them come through, it just helps me to feel safe.
At the other end of the state, this Gold Coast family has joined the chorus calling for a crime crackdown. Captured on CCTV, young intruders invaded their home, allegedly taking off with 2 cars and thousands of dollars in property, leaving behind a trail of damage. their exploits posted online.
There is no deterrence. We need to give some serious jail time for these thugs.
Youth crime will be a key battleground at the October state election.
Get out now!
While overall crime is falling, the arrest rates for a small group of serious offenders is steadily increasing.
We have seen an increase in weapons being used in offending, and also a number of our robbery offences have seen an increase over the last financial year.
As of December, there were 45 declared serious repeat offenders in Queensland. Almost half were in Townsville. A parliamentary inquiry has just wrapped up public hearings around the state, examining ways to reform Queensland's youth justice system. Some, including Townsville's mayor, are pushing for mandatory minimum sentences for certain offences and removing the principle of detention as a last resort. Queensland already locks up more young people than anywhere else in the country. 70% are Indigenous. Elders and advocates say detention is not the solution and want to focus on healthcare and diversion.
They're children. Should we be incarcerating these children and allowing them to just, learn and keep learning the ways of, crime?
The biggest street university in the country opened in Townsville a few months ago. It's already engaged with more than 250 at-risk young people.
If you only make the stick bigger to whack someone with, you're only going to find, just as we have with our drug laws, it doesn't stop people using drugs. You actually need opportunities for that person to find something else. So it is the same for youth crime.
An interim report into Queensland's youth justice reforms is due at the end of March. Lily Nothling, ABC News, Townsville.
A Tasmanian company and its owner have been fined a combined $45,000 over a waste spill that caused the deaths of more than 100,000 fish. Jenkins Hire and its owner, Tim Jenkins, pleaded guilty to charges including causing material environmental harm over the September 2020 incident. Waste had spilled into the Plenty River northwest of Hobart, resulting in fish deaths at the nearby salmon ponds. The company uses industrial waste from Norwegian company Norsk Skog to create compost, but Mr Jenkins says it has since changed its practices. The company must also pay the Inland Fisheries Service almost $15,000 in compensation. In South Australia, the head of the Country Fire Service has confronted a former volunteer who deliberately lit several bushfires in the Adelaide Hills, labelling his actions as abhorrent. Former CFS volunteer Gregory John McGannon was found guilty by a district court jury in September of drunkenly starting several fires on a day of extreme heat in January 2021. The blazes near Cherry Gardens destroyed 2 homes and scorched nearly 3,000 hectares of land. The court heard more than 2,000 volunteers and 400 appliances were deployed during the emergency. The CFS Chief Officer says McGannon's actions put communities at risk of an Ash Wednesday-type disaster.
They were horrific conditions, and this fire was threatening some of the most densely populated parts of the hills, and there was a real risk that this could have had a devastating impact on those communities. And it's only thanks to the hard work of the men and women on the front line that was prevented.
And more than 100 people have nominated for positions in South Australia's First Nations Voice to Parliament. The state's Electoral Commission has revealed the candidates ahead of voting early this month. All up, 46 candidates will fill seats across 6 regions, and 12 of those will form the State Voice. This body will then provide direct advice to the state government on issues that affect First Nations people. A regional WA queer group has condemned a councillor who suggested people sexually attracted to children were part of the LGBTQI+ community. City of Albany councillor Thomas Bruff falsely claimed pedophiles were part of the plus in LGBTQI+.
Albany City Councillor Thomas Bruff made the comments at a council meeting while discussing Pride Week in the South Coast city. The ABC has obtained a transcript from the meeting. The false claim that the plus symbol in the acronym LGBTQI+ included adults attracted to children disappointed Albany Pride Group.
It's complete nonsense. There is no pride organisation in the world in which that is included in the plus.
But Dr. Brough has refused to back down.
It's a very broad, inclusive term. Inclusivity is not always good because what it does include is a group of people called minor attracted persons.
The councillor has been linked to the Liberal Party as a potential candidate for pre-selection for the state seat of Albany, but his comments have shocked the leader.
I'm not aware of that, but that just sounds bizarre. Look, I need to better understand that, but obviously those comments are not appropriate.
The Liberal Party told the ABC it could not confirm if Dr. Brough was among nominees for the seat of Albany, but did say it would name all candidates once nominations close. Jamie Tanu, ABC News, Albany.
It's been 2 years since the catastrophic night when a massive flood swept through the Northern Rivers region. Thousands of people had their lives turned upside down and many are still struggling to get back on track. In the regional city of Lismore, land buybacks and new buildings are gradually changing the landscape and thoughts are starting to turn to the future. Emma Rennie has this Stateline report.
John and Georgina own a timber home in a leafy street in Lismore. They survived the flood and are determined to stay.
The street feels different, it feels quiet, it feels less safe because there's not as many people living in the houses.
The street is deemed to be high risk, and many have moved out as part of a government buyback program.
The thought of vacant blocks is distressing because you've lost the fabric of the neighbourhood completely. So where there were families, you've got nothing.
Across Lismore, whole streets have been hollowed out, although many who wanted a buyback have missed out. Chris Lego rents this house from a friend. Under the buyback scheme, he's been offered the chance to move with the house to higher ground.
I find myself in this strange position of being gifted a giant house, but now I've got to figure out how to move it and where to move it to.
The state government has announced more land for housing will be made available nearby, but that won't be for another 2 years.
Lismore has long been a colourful and vibrant city and a service centre for the region. The question for residents now is not just where they will be in 12 months' time, but what the city will look like for years to come. That's something government and organisations are turning their attention to as well.
This is the time to really reimagine things, don't do it the same, and I think that's what the appetite of the community is telling us.
The 2022 floods were the most costly Australian disaster on record. Lismore Council alone is facing a repair bill of almost $1.5 billion. It's now drawing up plans for what the city might look like in the future. And a university research program is asking residents for their ideas.
People are talking about orchards, people are talking about urban forestry, they're talking about recreation, bike trails.
We are hoping this process supports a kind of growing sense of the opportunities that exist in reconstruction.
In the wake of disaster, seeds of hope for a better future. Emma Rennie, ABC News, Lismore.
A visiting team of scientists from Germany has touched down in Cairns in far north Queensland to measure hot tropical clouds and create better global climate projections. The team are measuring moisture, particulates and gases transported from the surface of the planet in a flying laboratory 15 kilometres above sea level. This story was produced by Brendan Mounter.
We are scientists from Germany and we are here to take some atmospheric measurements with an airplane. The airplane is called HALO and it has very special features so that it can hold many different scientific instruments and it can fly very high in the air, so at 15 to 16 kilometers altitude.
It has a very, very long range, so we can reach places 10,000 kilometers away from us. We can go very high, we can go up to 15 kilometers in the atmosphere, and we can stay in the air for 12 hours, which gives us a lot of freedom to do really great research up in the air. It's a research aircraft, so that means we can measure the meteorological conditions also much better. So we can measure pressure, temperature, water vapor in the air with the worldwide best accuracy.